Hello everyone, Ron Spomer here. I think we have a real treat because my guest today is John McCall, who's an optometrist who studied lenses and refraction of light and all that woo-woo stuff that goes into making good optics. He is you're practicing optometrist, is that right?
Practicing optometrist, yes, and I also do surgery. I'm one of the few medical optometrists that's also qualified to do surgery, and so I've been doing surgery for 10 years.
Wow. Now, how long have you been working with optics, building scopes and binoculars and designing them and that sort of thing?
Well, Ron, my my Bachelor of Science was in geometrical and physiological optics, so I had that back in my cobwebs of my brain, and then after going on all the hunting trips, shooting from various angles, studying a little long distance, I saw some deficiencies in the way the brain interprets the image coming in, and I thought, with my background, I should be able to do a better job. So I spent 3 years, to answer your question, 3 years on the R&D for this.
3 years of developing this stuff.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is different about the way you came at making a scope than everyone else out there who makes scopes? You came at it from a little bit different angle, didn't you?
I did. I think everybody concentrates, most scope manufacturers concentrate on the lens, the glass, and obviously the exit pupil, and that's where it ends. I came at it from the way the brain perceives the image that's coming into the eye. And one of the things that really throws that off is when you cant the scope to the left or the right. And Ron, everybody cants, and the real quick reason I think everybody knows that you can't if they've studied long range shooting much at all, but nobody really knows why. Well, the reason why it cants is because the eyeball or the vision works best only in the upright and straight position, and it does pretty good as you swing left and right because there's 6 ocular muscles that control each globe, and they have to simultaneously work together.
Slow down here.
Okay.
6 muscles in each eyeball
Each eyeball.
are controlling it?
Each eyeball, right.
Okay.
And they have to work together. So, and they do a really, really good job. That's why you can look up and to the left and left and right. You still have good depth perception, stereoptic vision. Here's where it falls down, Ron, is when you lean your head over like you would have to do to look through a rifle scope.
Yeah.
The eye is now torqued over to the side. The eye doesn't like to be torqued, so it tries to get right again. And while it's trying to do that, which it can't because those muscles are holding it, while it's doing that, it's sending signals to the brain, and the part of the brain that interprets those signals is getting bad signals. So when your brain is telling you what's perfectly vertical and horizontal, basically it's lying to you. It's not. So you will be canted. Average cant's 5 degrees, and some as much as 8 or 9 degrees, and that's a lot in long range shooting.
Yeah. Now tell us what happens at long range when you've got a vertical crosshair, your reticle coming down vertically, and you're holding over your target. Well, now that thing is not. You've got a cant to it. It's no longer the bullet following the path of that vertical line like you think it is. It's dropping off to the side of the line, right?
Right, and when you twist it, usually most rifles have got a right twist to them coming out, which has a tendency to give you spin drift to one side. Now, if you tilt to one side or the other, you are increasing that spin drift by quite a bit. So, if you're shooting this without a bubble level or any kind of leveling system on your rifle, at 100, maybe 200 yards, you may not even notice it. You may think your shots are within the margin of error and not even know this because your canting is throwing it off. But Ron, that angle goes out wider as you go out. So the average, a 5 degree cant at 1,000 yards will throw your bullet off 36 inches.
36 inches.
In the direction of the cant.
Wow. Now, what did you do to correct that?
Well, I put a bubble level inside, and most competitive shooters will have an attached bubble level on the outside, and that's okay if you're bench shooting and you've got plenty of time to look at that, make sure everything's level. Hunting, Ron, it just doesn't work. I mean, you're excited, it's a shot of a lifetime, so I wanted it to be more intuitive than that. So I put a bubble level at the lower end. The south end of the reticle is just like a carpenter's bubble level. Now, I'm not the first one to do that, so that's not a patented technology right there. But the problem is, it's always been hard to see because it's sort of dark down there, and it never really caught on. So my idea, which I ended up just 2 months ago getting a patent on this, and when you get that bubble level in the perfect, I call it the primary position, meaning everything's perfect, it's hooked to a microprocessor, so it illuminates green. Now, if you turn it or tilt it 1 degree to the left or 1 degree to the right, the green light cuts out.
Absolutely, it's doing it right now.
I mean, in our world, green means go.
Yeah.
So in the heat of the moment, if you're trying to make a long shot and you're not seeing that green light, after you shoot with my scope or a stealth vision scope for a while, you will know the way you can. I'm right-handed, I'm left-eye dominant, I always shoot left-handed, I always cant to the right. So if I were to make that shot real quick and I don't have to look down, I didn't see any green light, I know I've got to go a little bit more to the left, I'm gonna see green light, pull the trigger, I'm within the kill zone
Just
to
that
1,000 yards.
Oh, that's sweet. So I see where this is going. You're up in the mountains and you've got to slam down and take a shot at a ram across the canyon. And you're on a rocky slope and your brain be tilted over and your brain's telling you this is level and your body's not level and your scope, and you've got trust the green light.
Absolutely. It's just like a pilot flying in the clouds. You do not trust what your brain and your body's telling you. You trust what the instruments are telling you. So this is your instrument, just like flying an airplane, and you got to believe your instruments. And the example you gave, Ron, is perfect because when you're hunting in the mountains, you rarely have vertical and horizontal clues. Everything's at a slant, and that confuses the brain even more. Because if you're on flat ground and you have a bunch of telephone poles and in other words, you have vertical clues, the brain will perform a little bit better on the cant. But if you have no clues at all, you have no idea how far you're leaning that gun over. You have to have an instrument to tell you.
Now, in addition to this anti-cant bubble in here to help you out, I see you can turn on an illuminated reticle for dark conditions or a dark animal. You can get a red reticle center.
You can get the red reticle, and that is put in there for dwindling daylight. So if it has happened before where an animal that you know is there, and by the time that animal presents itself for a shot, you're all ready to go, and you can see everything except your crosshairs. Well, you're not going to take that shot because so having a little bit of illuminated reticle solves that problem. Plus, you still have the green light to make sure you're level.
All right, now, I'm noticing that this is a really big scope. I mean, it's bulky, it's heavy. What is the main tube size? I mean, this looks even bigger than the 30-millimeter tube.
Good question, good. When I designed this scope, as I mentioned before, I have geometrical optics in my background, in my bachelor. And when I decided I wanted to design my own scope, I went to the scope manufacturer, and I know they manufacture one of the largest scope manufacturers in the world, Ron. And I know that they make a lot of scopes. So I got the engineers in and I said, I want to design my own scope. So forget everything let's start from scratch.
How'd they take that?
Well, they said, all right, got out their papers,
Wow.
and we started with the best glass, multi-coating reflections, everything to transmit the best light. The two things that we have in a telescope, you have a double inverted image, so it's the right size by the time you get here. So the variation of that is the length of the tube, the size of the tube, and then the two things that we measured was the light transmissibility coming out of here and the eye box or the eye relief. How much flexibility can you get out of that? So we started varying everything. And we started with a 30-millimeter tube, as you mentioned, went all the way up to a 34. We actually went up to a 35, and we maximized out at a 34-millimeter tube. So all of my scopes are set on 34-millimeter for that reason. It passes more light in there, and actually, if you're dialing to shoot, you actually have more depth for that. Yes.
How did it increase the eye box? This is something I've never understood about scopes. I understand eye relief. You can set it for getting complete view without the edge blackout at a certain distance. I like 4 inches. Some scopes are as little as 2.5 inches, and if you got a high recoiling rifle, you're going to get busted.
Right.
But you can, on say a pistol scope, you're holding it out there at arm's length. You got all that eye relief, but you don't have much of a field of view. So you're trading field of view for more eye relief. You struck a balance at about what? What are you getting for an eye relief on that?
We're probably at about 3.5 inches back here. And of course, anytime you look at your eye relief, on lower power, you've got more flexibility. On higher power, so we try to measure everything on the highest power we can so we can know what flexibility we get. And that's where the length of this comes into play. If you shorten this too much, you start giving up light. If you lengthen it too much, and you give up the eye relief. So it's just a balance of all the mechanisms to have the perfect image coming through. And we think we hit this on this, because this is not a scope that will take one off the shelf and let me tell you how to put my bubble in it. It wasn't near that simple. We redesigned the entire optical system. So the Stealth Vision's optical system is truly unique. It's different from any other system out there.
That's interesting. Now, you've got all the bells and whistles on here. I see you're dialing MOA. Do you offer custom turrets?
We do. I wrote the instruction booklet myself, and I'm going to tell you, this whole project, Ron, writing that instruction booklet might have been right at the top of that pyramid on the hardest thing to do, because you're trying to write something that everybody, I've got my thought process, and I'm trying to, the end user, so they will understand what I'm talking about. So I spent a lot of time on that. Plus, I put QR codes in there. So when we're talking about how to shoot data, how to level the scope on your rifle, you can read in your instruction booklet how to do it, or you can hit your smartphone on a QR code and you'll have a professionally done video of either myself or Joe Cunningham showing you how to do that, showing you how the function buttons work and all of that. But back to the turret, yes, when we put this on a rifle, and you can, anybody that buys a scope can put this on their rifle, and we tell them how to zero it. We prefer either 100 or 200 yards. We like to zero it at 200 yards, and then it has an internal zero stop. And I like to set the zero stop at 100 yards. So if I get a close shot and I just turn it down to the zero stop, I'm at 100 yards. I'm already there.
Otherwise, you leave it at 0, that's dead on at 200, and then all your data is from there.
Right. And most people, and myself, before we started doing this, I have a little laminated card on the side, cheat sheet. So if something's out there at 500 yards, I could look at that and I go, okay, that's 6.5 MOA, and I would dial the 6.5 MOA and now get the bubble level, and I'm dead on. Those precious seconds right there could cost you a shot. So once we have shot the data all the way out, and we shoot everyone out ourselves to 1,200 yards, then we take a blank turret, and instead of the 0 being a 0, it's now a 2, which represents 200. And we put them every 25 yards. So now if you want to shoot a 550-yard shot, you dial to 5.5 and get the green light and pull the trigger. You got it.
Cool. So you've got obviously several sizes. You got a 5 to 20 by 50 here in this box. This one's a 5 to 30 by 56, sort of big objective lens on that for low light conditions. Big heavy scope. Grandpa Ron's not going to be packing this one up into the sheep mountains, I'll tell you that. You got a small one?
Yeah, this is the one you're looking for. If you're a mountain hunter, this is our SVT, which is Stealth Vision Tactical. It's a 3 by 18 by 44, and we designed this for a couple of reasons. One is, if you want to put a clip-on thermal scope on here, 3 magnification seems to work really well with the clip-on thermals. We use a Leica on ours right now, but we're designing our own. And so that gives you wonderful resolution. And when you go up to 18, it's a sacrifice, because we wanted the bell to be small enough to we can knock some weight off of this for an AR rifle, but still have 18 power enough to shoot out to 1,000 yards. Because as you know, there's a lot of AR rifles that will shoot out to 1,000, 1,200 yards. They're getting better and better with AR rifles. But this also, if for a mountain gun, this is your scope, because it's going to come in probably a good half pound less than everything. It's still on a 34 millimeter tube, because we want to optimize everything we can on your eye relief and your visibility coming through there. And that was our 3rd scope we did, and we kind of thought it would be a niche scope, and we were wrong.
People like it?
They love it. They love it.
This is one I would gravitate to, just because I'm usually a mountain hunter, and I cover a lot of ground. And at my age, that ground is getting a lot harder to cover.
You telling Noah about the flood, buddy? I know.
Now, how long have you been? I mean, Stealth Vision. I think I remember seeing it last year, maybe once before that. How new is this company?
This company, right about now, is 2.5 years old.
Just 2.5.
2.5. Yes, sir. I did 3 years on R&D, and then at the end of in the fall, we did sort of a light launch the fall of 21. By that, I just mean we sold to a few friends. We just had a handful of guns. We did our actual rollout in Dallas Safari Club in the first weekend in January of 2022. And so we did 22, 23, and now we're 24. So this is we're halfway through our third year, and we've really added a lot of products. We now have, we went, like I think everybody starts out, we went from our little table with a cloth hanging over it and a little banner in the background, and now we have a professional booth. We have spotting scopes, we have range finding binoculars, we have 2 binoculars now, not just one, and we're adding more products all the time.
Wow, pretty exciting stuff. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about scopes in general, as a lot of us shooters, especially as we're getting a little bit older, or anyone who has some eye issues, all kinds of questions pop up about, am I seeing through my scope the same as everyone else? One question we get a lot is, if I zero my rifle perfectly, I get my diopter set, nice and sharp crosshair for me to see it, and then I dial out my parallax at 100 yards or 300 yards, and I get in the center of the scope, and the parallax is completely removed, and I shoot dead on, and I give it to my buddy, and he shoots 2 inches higher or lower. What's going on?
What's going on there is basically, in theory, if your eyes were exactly like your buddy's eyes, which rarely happens, and both of you have perfectly spherical corneas, you have no astigmatism, you're not trying to overcompensate because you're a little farsighted. He's not trying to deal with the fact he's a little bit nearsighted, but the scope is kind of making up the difference for him, so it's not a real problem. That's where your parallax comes into play, because the first thing you want to do is, like when I get a new scope, Ron, I'm going to have this tuned all the way down.
That's the diopter adjustment.
Right, and
all that does is makes the reticle sharp to you.
Exactly, and I start unscrewing this, looking only at the reticle itself, and ours has got horizontal numbers so you can do wind holes. So I like to look at those numbers, and I unscrew this while I'm looking through it until it's just perfectly clear, absolutely perfectly clear. That for you, you'll never have to touch that again. Then when you focus this, the focus for say 500 yards or 800 or 200, whatever it may be, that puts the plane of the reticle and the focal plane in the same plane. And when you have no parallax, and you're looking through here, if you move your head up and down like this, it doesn't move. If you move your head up and down like this and you haven't eliminated all parallax, then you get reticle jump. What's happening in that situation is your buddy's looking through this. His focal diopter would be a little different than yours. Probably he's a little low or a little high. It's projecting that reticle a little high, a little low. And he may hold, because of his cheek, he may hold that same way every time. So he could be consistently 2 inches higher than you all the time. And until you get this perfect where he realizes, oh, wait a minute, I'm not looking through the center of that.
So you really don't have to re-zero your scope. You just have to make sure your diopter is right for the individual.
Right. When we pass a gun off, especially when we have multiple shooters, which we do a lot out at the ranch, and we hand to somebody else, the first thing we'll say, forget where you're looking at. Don't look down range, look at the reticle. Is it clear?
Now, I usually put it against a clear sky or something so I'm not confused by it.
I think that's a perfect way to do it. A perfect way to do it, because that way you don't have clutter in the background. You have nothing but the reticle. Then you get it perfectly clear. It just takes a second, but when you're going from shooter to shooter, you will have some parallax problems, unless you're lucky enough that both are exactly the same, and then there's no difference. And then past that, where the difference comes is the leveling. because you shoot right-handed, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Well, I shoot left-handed. Most likely, you're going to cant the rifle one way. I'm going to cant it the other way. But with the bubble level inside there, as long as we've got a green light and that bubble is perfectly split the south end of the reticle, it's like putting that rifle in a vise and pulling the trigger. It's going to shoot pretty much the same every time if it's a quality rifle, and that takes that elimination out of that.
Nice to know. Are there any other eye issues? Some guys will write in and say, I cannot see through, say, a high magnification scope. There's something wrong with my eyes. I just cannot shoot well. What should they have their eye doctor look at? What are the kind of problems that they might want to address?
I've run into this a number of times, especially farsighted individuals, and I can tell immediately, being an optometrist, when I look at it and they've got thick glasses, I understand that they're farsighted. You don't get it as much with nearsighted. Nearsighted is a convex lens. It comes in like this, but a farsighted lens is a plus lens, or that comes out like this, a concave. Well, concave and convex, and this is a convex one going out like that.
Bulges out.
The bow is out. So the problem with shooting with glasses on is when you lean your head over like this, the eye's out of position, and you're not looking through the dead center of that lens most of the time, and it's projecting, you're getting a little prismatic effect. So I will have a lot of folks that will go back and forth, and they got glasses on, they're farsighted, and I'll say, hey, this may not work for you, Ron, but take your glasses off.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the parallax. Look up at the sky. Let's try to adjust the dioptric measurement without your glasses on. Now go back in there and see if that is. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I get a, oh my gosh, wow.
And now they're shooting well,
because now they're shooting well, because if they've got a lot of astigmatism, it's not going to work because they need that correction in their glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they might just need to reposition it up a little higher.
Okay.
It's kind of like when you're bird shooting, the old shooting glasses sit up high because you're always looking up, and you want to be looking through the center of the lens, or you're going to get a prismatic effect. That's why a lot of people that have a lot of prescription and they're duck hunting, they always shoot high or they shoot low because that's what they're seeing. But it's not where the bird really is.
Yeah. Well, here's what personal problem I have. So I have to have glasses to see those deer. So I can't go hunting without my glasses. I can shoot off the bench the way you're saying. Don't use my prescription glasses. Use some safety glasses. And I can shoot beautifully after I've set up my diopter and the parallax adjustments. But now I'm in the field and things are going to happen quickly and change quickly, and I need to spot my game. So there's my deer. I spotted him at 300, 350 yards. I lie down and I've got a weird position, and I'm getting my head down there and I'm looking through the corner of my glasses. And my reticle actually bends. I can see that my reticle is bending. When I first started noticing this, I thought there was something wrong with the scope. I've got a broken reticle. It's not vertical, it curves until, duh, it must be my glasses. So like you said, when I moved to the center of my glasses, I had to take the time to do that to notice it though. And I guess that's probably one of the common problems. People are looking through their glasses at a weird cornering angle sort of, and they're getting that distortion.
No, that's exactly right. You get prismatic distortion in glasses when you're not looking through the center. We call it the major reference point of the lens. Now, the bigger the prescription, the more deflection you get.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing exactly the right thing. I like to, when I go bird hunting, and I can relate rifle shooting and what you're saying to bird hunting because I do a lot of all kinds of hunting. And when I get to the blind, anytime that I'm shooting bad, I'm mounting the gun short. And so I'm not. So when I get to the blind early, I will sit there and I'll go through a little practice to make sure when I snap shoot at that dove or duck or quail or whatever it is, that I'm going to be looking down the barrel, because you're not aiming. You're pointing and shooting. What you're doing and what you just said is exactly what everybody should be doing. Before you get in the field, sort of look through there and look at your reticle and see, where do I have to hold my head, and you may have to do just a slight little turn and practice doing that over and over until you've reflectively, you want to go right to that. So in the heat of the moment, just like I'll practice mounting that shotgun, if you'll practice doing that, and do that. And if it's something that's a problem every time you go hunting, it just takes a few seconds to do that and say, okay, when that happens, I want to do that. And then you'll go right to that position and you won't have that problem.
Yeah, sort of like ironing in your muscle memory.
Exactly.
You want your cheek weld the same, you want to have your position the same, all that's good stuff. You need to think about not having your head twisted around goofy so you're looking through the corner of your glasses.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Any other little odd things that folks who wear eyeglasses might bump into when they're working with a scope?
I think that's most of it. The biggest thing is parallax. You've got good optical systems, bad optical systems. Ours is, I feel like the best out there because we best glass, best coatings, and we've optimized everything there. And but setting this is sort of like in your binoculars. You'll have one eye that you'll set. You'll set the focus with one and the dioptric measure with the other to bring the two on the same plane. Here, you've only got one plane, and there are two things to worry about: the plane of the animal and the plane of the reticle, and getting those two in the same plane eliminates parallax.
Now, I have always thought and taught that if you're having any issues with your scope, shoot it at your low power settings. Everything's a little easier with the low power. The higher your magnification, the more you magnify any little problems you might have.
Exactly. It's just like I said, the prescription in your glasses. If you have a lot of prescription, there's more margin for error. And the higher the magnification, the more margin of error there is. So, not to mention a smaller field of view. So, I think most of us, Ron, that have hunted as much as you and I have, will keep it down on about 8 or 10 until we're ready for the shot, because we want that wide field of view. So when I throw it up there, I go from my binoculars to that. I want to find it, and I want to find it very, very fast.
And I also like to shoot at a lower setting. If I have, say, an 18x at my upper end, and it's always tempting to get that big magnification because you really feel confident when you can see your reticle right there at the sticking spot. But when you come out of recoil, you try to find that animal again, your field of view is so small that you're going, where did he go, where did he go? Well, I'll dial that baby down to 10 and have more field of view so I can come out of recoil and see that he fell right there or he ran off to the side, and then I just find that it works a lot better.
I think you're exactly right. And that's the other reason that all my scopes are first focal plane, because doing what you just said there, let's say we've got a 30 power scope and you have now turned it down to 10. And when you look through there and you've got 1 minute of angle, you'll say, okay, or maybe I'm going to play 2 minutes of wind for a right to left wind. So I'm going to hold into the wind and readjust myself for 2 minutes. Well, guess what? On a second focal plane, the only time 2 minutes is 2 minutes is on maximum power. Right. And if you turn it down to 15, you've now doubled the minutes. Now, if you turn it down to 10 or 8, now you've got a mathematical problem.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure
I
out.
don't do good math when I have a big rack in front of me.
So with a first focal plane, your reticle gets bigger or smaller, but the minutes of angle stay exactly the same. You don't have to think about that. I'm all into helping the hunter, the shooter, to get that shot off as quick as possible and as accurate as possible and eliminate all the errors. And a second focal plane scope, not on full power, playing the wind, is asking for trouble.
I've been there, done that.
I have too.
Okay, now folks, these are not inexpensive scopes because Doc here didn't want also ran. He wanted the best. You told me earlier, you just told those engineers when they said, well, it's going to cost more money, you said, money is not our object here. Ours is to make the best quality scope possible.
Right, exactly. And I had mentioned some of the optics that we said, and I think this is when we start talking about the optics, what makes our optics better? What makes it more unique? Well, I'm an optometrist, but I mentioned I also do surgery. As a matter of fact, I'm the founder and the president of the American Academy of Optometric Medicine and Surgery, and I patented a glaucoma lens that we use for surgery. It's the #1 selling lens in the world. And the optics that we use in operating microscopes are obviously the best optics in the world. They're used all over the world. So I looked at the optics that we have in the microscopes and said, how can I bring that into the hunting world to increase visibility, light, reflectability, all those things. So what I learned in the surgical world, and I mainly do laser surgery for glaucoma, And a lot of reflective lenses we have to use in that, and certainly in the one that I patented, we've got the most reflective surface in the world. That's what we use in our binocular, and that's what makes them so unique. But I like to think of this as, I'm an eye doctor, I'm an eye surgeon, and I'm a hunter, and I think I'm the only one that's brought those two together.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I don't know every engineer out there at every scope company, but you're the first optometrist I've ever talked to who designed some optical quality tools like this. So this is really quite fascinating. I really want to thank you for educating me on some of this stuff. Well, I don't know about you folks, but I gotta honestly say I have never met an optometrist who is also designing scopes and binoculars and such. So this is really refreshing. I had a lot of questions about eyes and glasses and making things work with scopes. If our fans out here have questions about that sort of thing, may they contact you to answer some of that stuff?
Absolutely, Ron. I get these questions all the time, and I really, since it's such a passion of mine, I enjoy it.
Cool. So where can they get a hold of you?
If you go to our website, which is www.stealthvision.com, you can contact us there at info@stealthvision.com, and I believe that our email address is on there. You can get Joe, who works with me, joe@stealthvision.com, or me, doc@stealthvision.com. So I'd say the easiest way is just to email me at doc@stealthvision.com. If you've got any question that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to do that.
You probably do surgery too if you need it.
And over the email might be a little hard, but
Well, I want to thank you again for stopping in and visiting with us and answering a lot of these optical questions that have been bugging me for years. I think people are going to really appreciate this. Some good insights. So folks, if you're looking for a scope, you want to check out Stealth Vision, but also, like Doc said, if you've got questions about your eyeglasses and why you have trouble working with scopes and stuff, he might be able to just give you some simple advice that would help you out. You may need to go to your own local optometrist and get some changes made or something, or ask them, but it's nice to have good information from somebody who really knows the topic, and this gentleman certainly seems to do that. So thank you all for joining me. Here is wishing you all a bright and clear view during this hunting season when you will all be hunting honest and shooting straight.